Any bill introductions this morning? Representative Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bill introduction. It is RS 3570 and would establish a Kansas Academic Excellence Scholarship Program to replace the Kansas Ethnic Minority Scholarship Program. And it would also create the First Generation Student Success and Scholarship Study Task Force to review existing scholarship programs.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? Second by Representative Woodard. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Also, I'd like to mention that we have Representative Carr here replacing Representative Alcala today in committee, and Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you guys still doing bill introductions?
We are, yes.
Fantastic. All right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce 24 RS 3369. It's in relation to cybersecurity and IT.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a motion to accept the bill introduction? Representative Helgerson, is there a second? Representative Owens, all those in favor of the bill introduction say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on. We're just going to have informational hearings on a lot of the construction projects that are going on throughout the state of Kansas. And so first is going to be an update on the Docking State Office Building and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment Lab. And so I'd invite Frank Burnham, the Deputy Secretary of Operations with the Department Administration. Mr. Burnham.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Frank Burnham, Deputy Secretary of Operations for the Kansas Department of Administration. I've provided you today with a few handouts there with some current slides of ongoing construction for both projects. And I'd just like to make a few comments on both projects and then pause for questions afterwards, if that would be okay.
That is perfectly fine.
So update on the docking building. The project started in February of last year, approximately 10 months. We met our schedule for the demolition by the end of December, and the steel was on site in January with the construction starting on the south end. And what you see now is the south end. We have framed out all 3 floors, including the penthouse, which is why it looks like a 4-story building. And we've been very blessed with good winter weather here in the January and February, so we're actually well ahead of schedule with the concrete pours and some of the other cold weather things that had been factored in. You'll also see in there where we did keep the existing columns. We removed the inner columns to open up the bay widths, and then those columns served as the structural base for the new steel construction. To go vertically, and again, as to transfer it down through the existing sub-basement, basement foundations. Slide 2 there on the north corner, I'll point out the CMU block construction. I get questions about that. So that is the new central monitoring and emergency dispatch for the Capitol Police. So that will be their hardened space within their area of the new building on the first floor there. Also on the right side there, you'll see a large excavation there where the State House tunnel connects. That's where the new stair and elevator will be a direct link from the State House tunnel link over into the new building and connect all 3 floors for easy access back and forth. What you don't see there is a significant amount of work that's currently taking place in the basement, including lots of HVAC, mechanical, fire sprinkler system work. As I've mentioned in previous testimonies or presentations, the vault that was down there that used to be the evidence storage for the Department of Revenue many years ago has now been converted into what's a thermal labyrinth. It's a series of CMU walls on 4-foot centers. It will allow us to bring in air during the evening hours down into the sub-basement where we can naturally cool that, essentially using some of the existing basement elements as like a heat pump to reduce our overall energy usage. And so there will be a display and exhibit as part of the new building exhibits that will demonstrate the energy and the modeling that went into the new construction and the design of this facility. We're currently working with our partners for the State Historical Society, the Department of Tourism, and the Arts Commission in developing what will be the exhibits, some of the permanent and temporary exhibits that will go into the new building. That's a process where we're meeting on a bi-weekly basis to develop those concepts so we can continue to provide that information to the contractor so that they can plan ahead for the infrastructure. From there, we'll develop an operations plan of how we will maintain, how we will reserve space, how we will make sure that the exhibits that are being utilized in the new facility are something that can change, that are interesting, and how we can also use the building, again, for promotion of Kansas products and business. We're also currently working on a plan for who will be the new tenants in the building. What that layout looks like. The current construction contract calls for what's essentially a white box. So it has finishes, it has ceilings, it has the carpet, electrical infrastructure. But we'll be working with the potential new tenants to develop the space within the building. The amount of lease space in the new building will represent roughly 65,000 square feet of what is 200,000 square feet constructed above ground. Of that, 150,000 is actually usable space. About 30,000 is dedicated to the mechanical pit house and equipment. We're also working with our partners in the Highway Patrol to determine what the screening and security protocols will be for the new building, bearing in mind that this will be a direct link and connection to our Kansas State House. So we're looking for consistency in that process. Also physical security. It's being implemented around the perimeter of the building. And as of now, we're still on target for June of 2025 would be our actual occupancy date. At that point, there will be an obviously series of moves that will transpire between different agencies moving into the building, but we're still anticipating a July 1 opening for the public for this facility. Moving on to the KDHE laboratory. Again, we've been blessed here in Kansas with great weather, which has allowed our construction to really move at an expedited pace. They were able to get all the exterior limestone terracotta up and done before the end of December, and we were able to get temporary heat in there. So there's actually drywall ceilings. There's actual painting going on within the spaces that are finished out. I believe there's going to be an opportunity coming up first part of April to take committee members through the building if they choose to take that tour. I would certainly encourage that. It's a very great space. It's really taken shape inside. Right now they're working on polishing interior concrete floors and just general finish stuff. Also, mechanical equipment will be hoisted into the penthouse, and some of the other major components are now starting to show up. There, we're also working again with our partners with Highway Patrol and the agency to make sure we're addressing all security protocols for that building, developing an operation plan for what that will look like. And then our KDHE is also in the process, while we're doing this, of developing what their move plan will look like as far as the transition into the new building. Right now, we're actually on target to be a little bit early on the delivery of the building. We're probably looking at a late October time frame, but then there will be an extensive amount of commissioning of equipment and moves into the building. So we're still probably figuring agency use of the building around January of 2025. After we vacate the Forbes facility, which we anticipate to be about a 3-month process, we will then start the decommissioning, and we're still in the works of developing plans for what that looks like as far as not needing that state asset anymore, and the land out there at the Forbes complex, which is roughly about 30 acres. So there will be a plan in place at a later date of what to do with that property as far as surplus or sale. With that, I'll stand for questions.
So first, I'd like to ask in regards to the docking state office building. You said that you're working with tenants. Do we, or can you disclose which tenants are
We have
possibly looking
not
at
made
coming in the
public
building?
who those tenants are. We're just talking to some of their administrative upper people, making sure that we're taking into consideration what their needs are going to be, that they're going to be the right fit, and that we can accommodate those requests. We will be making that public probably this summer so that their staff are then aware of what the plans are. We did think it was important to let them know so that they're not making uninformed decisions about what they think they might need in their current locations if they are slated to go to the docking building.
Well, and about 10 years ago, we had some tenants who were in the docking office building sign lease agreements with private firms, which had much higher rent than they had at docking. And I'm just wondering if they come back to docking, if the rent's going to be less, or if these are agencies that did not happen to sign with those higher rent payments.
We're looking at existing tenants that we have that are coming due in the next 5 years, or 3 years roughly, as potential to move back into state office buildings. We're also looking at tenants that are in existing office buildings where we need to relocate them in order to go in and refurbish their spaces and bring those up to speed. But we're also looking at how do we put agencies back together that might be fractured and in a multiple, so we got some that are in 4 different buildings right now. So all of those factors are coming into place, but there is no specific target on those large agencies and those lease spaces.
No, I'd say the agency they're referring to it being in 4 different locations is the Department of Revenue. Correct.
They are one of the multiple agencies.
Representative Helgerson.
Do you know what the rent's going to be on the building?
The rent structure will be the same rent rate as all of our other buildings. Again, we take our total debt for the entire capital complex, our operating expenses, and then we determine what that rate is. So currently, I want to say it's somewhere around that $21 a square foot by the time we get to that fiscal year.
Couldn't we demand more rent? And the reason I'm saying that, we're able to put a rent together, and I think, or we used to be able to still charge the federal government for part of that. So if we have a higher rent, which was always desirable, we can charge more money to the feds to pay for part of the cost.
Frank.
I don't have the specifics of that, but that's certainly something we could follow up with.
Thank you.
And you had mentioned with the ks.gov lab that they'll be completed in October of this year, is that correct?
They will turn the building over to us in October, but there's still a significant amount of work with furniture, IT, commissioning of setup and operations. So we will have multiple months of prep before people actually start conducting business in the building.
And I was just talking with the vice chair. I believe we do have the funding in the budget for the moving into the ks.gov lab for furnishings and then also the movement of moving those individuals from where they're at now into the new building.
Correct. There was some estimates done early on about the cost of the furniture. We're considering those to be soft costs that are in that construction amount. I would have to defer to the agency if those move costs are still accurate now based on what their plan is and the timing.
All right, committee, any questions in regards to the docking state office building or the new ks.gov lab? Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. With the ks.gov and the docking in this complex here, do you have a rough idea how many square feet that whole state complex would amass to be?
Frank.
I'll provide you with the actual numbers, but I want to say we were close to 2 million square feet.
Okay. And one follow-up.
Yes.
In some of the presentations, we've seen that there's going to be a eating facility in the docking, and will that be open to the public?
I'm sorry, could you state that again?
In some places, I've heard that there's going to be a place to eat in docking. Will that be open to the public?
Yes, currently in the plans, there is a small kind of a cafe sandwich similar to what we have here, like the Let Us Feed You Cafe. The intent would be that it would be open both to the public and to state employees. It's actually on the non-secured side of the security check-in.
Any further questions for Frank in regards to the 2 office buildings? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Frank, for the update.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have a briefing from our research staff. in regards to the capital projects involving National Guard facilities, the Emergency Management Services, and Northeast Kansas Veterans Home. So I believe the first individual is going to be Merle, who is going to be giving us the first presentation on those facilities. Merle.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Merle Riedel. I'm with Legislative Research. Today we'll be talking about capital projects involving the National Guard facilities, Emergency Management Services, and the Northeast Kansas Veterans Home. I'll hit on a couple projects related to the Adjutant General's Department, and then my colleague Molly Pratt will discuss a project with the Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs Office. So I'm referring to a document, says at the top, capital projects involving National Guard facilities, emergency management. Just to start out with, we'll talk about the Joint Forces Headquarters. In 2023, Legislature approved expenditures of $17.6 million, all from federal funds, for construction of a new Joint Forces Headquarters on federal property at Forbes Field, Air National Guard Base in Topeka. That is a 59,000 square foot facility that will house offices of the Adjutant General, command staff for the Kansas Army and Air National Guard, and other agency services supporting strategic operations and plannings. That is a two-story structure. Some members of the Joint Building Committee on State Construction actually had an opportunity to see that earlier this year. It was a very preliminary construction phase. It's a two-story structure. It will have a storm shelter built to FEMA standards. It does have ground source heating systems and high efficiency air conditioning. Funding for the Joint Forces Headquarters is provided through the Federal National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. Completion for the project is estimated for October 2024. And they anticipate an actual move-in date of December 2024. The project is anticipated to receive some additional federal funds through the National Defense Authorization Act of 2024, which hasn't passed yet. But they do anticipate receiving some additional funds essentially for the cost of completing some of the aspects. The next project is the State Defense Building remodel. The Adjutant General's Department plans to expend $22.6 million, all from federal ARPA funds, to remodel the State Defense Building in Topeka in FY 2024. That was built largely in the 1970s to hold the offices of the Adjutant General and command staff. State Defense Building currently houses the Division of Emergency Management, or KDEM, and the State Emergency Operations Center. The current configuration lacks sufficient technology, office training space, and capabilities to sustain prolonged operations during an emergency. So some initial concepts for the remodeled facility would include expanded offices, planning room, and classrooms for Kansas Division of Emergency Management personnel, a joint information center with press briefing facilities, and a newly constructed wing built to FEMA criteria capable of withstanding 250-mile-per-hour winds to house the State Emergency Operations Center and data centers. The State Finance Council approved ARPA funding for this project on December 1st, 2022 as part of the State Efficiency and Modernization Program. Moving on to the new Hayes Armory, the 2022 legislature appropriated $18.1 million, all from the State General Fund, to the Adjutant General's Department for construction of a new National Guard armory in Hayes. Expenditures include a land purchase and construction of a 49,000 square foot readiness center. The current armory is located in a floodplain. It's over 60 years old and lacks adequate training space and maintenance bay capacity to store modern vehicles. It's actually difficult for them to fit some of the vehicles inside that building's maintenance bays. On December 5th, 2023, the Kansas Military Board approved the purchase of a 25-acre site located north of I-70 at a cost of $1.3 million. That purchase is contingent on the property seller installing utility connections and annexation to the city of Hayes. The site was selected due to its minimal risk of inherent environmental concerns, so there was no sort of springs or adverse environmental conditions on that land. It was picked due to its proximity to I-70, so it was visible from I-70 but not directly adjacent to I-70, and it had space for potential future build-out. The new armory will house the 997 Brigade Support Battalion of the Kansas Army National Guard and a Star Base Youth Program. Project completion is estimated for FY 2028, and plans for disposition of the current Hayes Armory are still in development. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the projects for the Adjutant General's Department. Happy to stand for questions before Molly discusses the Veterans Home.
Committee, are there any questions from Merle in regards to these items? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask a question about a different project that's not on your list? It's for the Armory at 18th and I-70. I understand from the neighborhood that they are doing some significant renovations there. And so if I could get a timeline on that, that would be wonderful so that I could share that with the neighborhood. And then my other question is, when armories are tucked into our neighborhoods or adjacent to our neighborhoods, what type of community outreach can they expect? Because there's been very little for this project, and it's causing a lot of disruption in this neighborhood. At one time, they had a very good relationship with the Armory, and there was actually a neighborhood advisory committee, and now there's just disruption and they never know about it. So if I could share information with them and a timeline, and then also ask the Guard to perhaps host a community meeting so that they are aware of what's happening and perhaps can provide some input, that would be great.
Merle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have heard the agency discuss the 18th Street Armory, which is a large facility in Kansas City, and it is in fairly rough shape. I think that was a facility that experienced some flooding issues in 2022 during the severe weather of 2022, and they are doing some repairs to it. And I can definitely reach out to the agency and inquire for more information and see what they might be doing for outreach on that project.
All right, any other questions for Merle on these projects? The only comment that I would make, and as I served as the chairman of the Spark Committee on Government Efficiency and Modernization in regards to the new defense lab, when we scored that out, when we had that committee, it did not score very high in regards to what could be utilized for the ARPA funds. And it was not recommended by our committee back to the executive committee. But as you can see, as we've had discussions in here many times, it got funded somehow. So I just want to make that point. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, Merle, thank you for being here. And Molly, if you will give us the update on the other projects.
I should have worn heels. Good morning, committee. My name is Molly Pratt, and I'm a fiscal analyst with the Legislative Research Department. The 2023 legislature appropriated a total of $17.2 million, all from the State Institutions Building Fund, to the Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs Office to provide the state's portion for constructing a new home in Northeast Kansas. The estimated cost of the project is $49 million, with the remaining funding to be appropriated by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. Proponents for the new Veterans Home indicated that a new Veterans Home is needed in Northeast Kansas to accommodate the growing veterans population in this area. The agency currently operates 2 other Veterans Homes in the state, the Soldiers Home on Fort Dodge, and then the Veterans Home in Winfield, Kansas. In March 2021, Executive Order 21-07 directed the agency to submit an application to the VA State Veterans Home Construction Grant Program for a new home in Kansas. The 2022 legislature, however, authorized $17.2 million in bonding to demonstrate the state's commitment to its portion, which is approximately 35% of the project cost. The 2023 legislature then appropriated the same amount from SIBF within 2023 House Bill 2184, rather than providing 20-year bonds. House Bill 2184 also transferred 15 acres on the ground of the Kansas Neurological Institute in Topeka to KCVAO as a site for the new home. One reason this site was chosen is because it is adjacent to the federal Colmary O'Neill VA Medical Center. The 72-bed long-term care facility will include administrative offices, dining facilities, physical therapy spaces, common areas including dining facilities, theaters, and potentially a library, 4 resident households arranged in 2 neighborhoods with shared nursing stations and also single-person rooms. Certain rooms will have connecting doors in case their spouses are staying at the home also. The agency will complete design and development by December 2024. At this time, they've expended approximately $300,000 from SIBF on engineers and architects, and they are currently moving into the design development phase of the new home. The agency will learn later this, maybe later this month, but definitely this spring, whether they will be awarded the 65% federal government match for the funds. They were placed in priority group 8 at this time last year, meaning that it was not likely for them to be appropriated the money. However, the agency has stated that since they have the $17.2 million in an account now, the federal government has given them reasonable assurance that they will be placed in priority group 1. However, that still doesn't mean that they will be appropriated the federal funds, because I believe there's about $160 million the federal VA can appropriate for projects this year, and there are several other projects within the priority group 1. And if that's the case, the agency plans to reappropriate the SIBF funds into fiscal year 2025. Are there any questions?
I guess my main question would be, so the delay or the slow process on this project is the federal government?
Yes, the agency is waiting to hear back from the federal government and be appropriated the federal funds.
All right, thank you. Committee, any questions for Molly in regards to this project? All right, seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, committee, that is all we are going to be discussing today. I would like to make a note that our budget is anticipated, if there's no further changes, to be debated on the House floor on Tuesday. I don't know if many of you chimed in regards to the Senate debate last night in regards to their budget, which was considerably lengthy. I did listen to a major portion of it. But our budget is to be on the House floor on Tuesday. So as far as our schedule for next week, we are not going to be meeting tomorrow. We're not going to be meeting on Monday. And we're not going to be meeting on Tuesday due to the fact that we are having the budget on the House floor. Wednesday, we will be back at 9 a.m. and we'll be having basically gaming day. We're going to be talking about the lottery, the casinos, the historical race or historical horse race machines, and also sports betting, and also the Economic Development Initiatives Fund. So until 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning, we are adjourned.